Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
A very good morning to you. You are joining us on Newsline. Unfortunately, I am not Faraz Shaukatali. I am Chaturang Hapwaj. I am going to keep you company for this half an hour. Yesterday, we spoke to you about the current political situation in the country and what is happening in the United National Party. Will Minister Vijayadasa Rajapaksa resign? Was the topic of discussion yesterday. Today, we are going to move on from politics because that's what we seem to be doing a lot on this Newsline program, and we are going to talk to you about something that is even more important to the industrial sector here, to basically everyone who is involved in some form of computer network. We are going to talk about industrial cyber security. What is industrial cyber security? To talk about this and more, we have an interesting guest, Dr. Vincent Termel, joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Firstly, Doctor, let's get to the point straight away. I'll ask you straight away. What is this industrial cyber security that all of us keep talking about?
Industrial control systems are computer-based systems which are there to regulate any physical apparatus, appliances. Basic system would be elevators, traffic light, maybe even machines in IT factories. At a more complex system, you're looking at entire power grid, refineries, etc. But this is in our everyday life, even in cars, every systems like that.
But if you take a look at this, when you think of the word cyber security, you tend to think that all these new technologies that are coming out, with everyday things developing very fast, the cyber industry seems to be the most vulnerable industry in terms of getting attacks. We saw one very recently, ransomware. There are other forms of attacks happening. How do we look at this in that aspect? Industrial cyber security, is it really working?
Well, the issue is that industrial controls in general have been designed to be isolated, to work by themselves on their little network, and security was not designed in it at all. These systems have a very long life cycle. Companies install them and expect to run them for 15, 20 years. And not like your computers in the office, where after 5 years you get a new computer, get new operating systems. So the systems are typically old and not designed for security. They're really designed to run systems reliably, but security was never designed in there. And the challenge is now we are actually connecting these systems to the enterprise networks. We're also connecting them to the outside world, putting web interfaces to connect them remotely. And that is really creating the risk, because you have unsecured systems which are now connected on the internet.
So with your expertise, when you say cyber security, industrial cyber security, does this mean that can I be, in very layman terms, can I say that you're creating an antivirus software for all these industrial computers?
That would be very convenient, but unfortunately we're dealing with black boxes, with a box where you can't put software in them typically. Yeah. So what we have to do is we have to correct it in another way. If you look at it, it's very important for critical sectors. These systems are in everyday life. They are, I mentioned earlier, maybe traffic light is not very important, but it can be. You can create chaos. It actually happened in 2006 in Los Angeles, where people actually put some traffic light to red and created traffic chaos.
Yeah.
But you can actually, these systems need protection because they are vulnerable, and every day more vulnerabilities are being recognized.
So, Doctor, you have been in the country for about 20 years, you said. Been here in Sri Lanka, you have been traveling in and out?
No, my wife is Sri Lankan, so I've been coming to Sri Lanka for close to 20 years.
All right.
Yes.
We, here in Sri Lanka, when we talk about cyber security, I tend to think that we are a bit on the backside of things. We are following the first world countries when it comes to these things. Am I right in saying this, that cyber security is something that we can think in the second run and not, have first priority to?
Well, you have more resilience in a way. You might be less dependent on the automation first world countries have, but at the same time, you're building an infrastructure. You're building up the country. You're building the port cities. You're interconnecting your electrical grid to India, and all these bring new challenges. You're going to be bringing all this extra automation, and it's the time to build it right at the beginning, because it's very hard to fix things after the fact.
When we move on, as you very rightly said, with Sri Lanka expanding, with all these infrastructure facilities coming out in the country, we know that more and more people with the technological advancement, Sri Lanka will be vulnerable in the future. What are these areas that Sri Lanka has to look at now? Let's take, we are in 2017 now, we are saying we are going to digitize our economy in 2020, so on and so forth. What area should Sri Lanka be looking at in this area?
Well, if you look at it, the key things to protect is what we call critical infrastructures. And that varies slightly from country to country, but basically it is electricity, distribution, water, anything that the country needs to function. So it includes banking system, transportation, and we're talking airport, ports, railways. We're also taking healthcare. Anything really that the country needs to function needs to be protected to some level. You
mentioned the traffic light systems earlier, but Sri Lanka does not, to my knowledge, have a system in terms of that. It's manually operated. We spoke about the railways. The railway system is still manually operated using the signal system. Transportation, we all these key sectors that you spoke about, even the water distribution seems to be, except for the purification part, which seems to be happening at very primary levels, if I'm right in saying that. So where do we look at cyber security in terms of all those?
Well, if you think about it, a lot of these systems are all coming into play. Sri Lanka has a lot of manual operations, but there's a lot of automation as well. If you look it up, every industry doesn't think they're a target, but they're concerned. Everybody believes their systems are isolated. Everybody believes that they're not a target. But there are different levels here. First of all, these systems are connected. You have automation. The car you drove this morning to come here probably has some level of automation into it.
Definitely.
And that's going to be increasing. All the electrical operators, your power grid, Ceylon Electricity Board, and all these companies producing electricity, distributing electricity. All across the world, they use the same system. There's only a few manufacturers which are actually making these systems, which are used to distribute the electricity, to control how it is. Here, yesterday I had another little power off for an hour. This is a little.
I had an experience this morning before I came.
So this is load shedding. There's probably too much demand for what the grid can do, and it means there's a control room and there are computer systems which are there saying, well, we need to cut electricity in that area for a little while, and these systems. Or sometimes it happens because a pole is down, to cut off the power. So you need to be able to remote control this at the level of the whole country. You can actually do that.
Now, in terms of your international experience, where does this industrial cybersecurity function properly or function at a very good stage? What country has the best cybersecurity in terms of industries? That's
a great question. I'm afraid there's no country which is doing very well in that respect. If you see recent cyber attack, Ukraine seems to have been a training ground recently. There's been a lot of malware which has been deployed in Ukraine. Back in December 2015, there's a special attack on their power grid, which spread. In December last year, again, it took the power grid, the national railways, the banks out. And we've got some more recent, just like in May, we have a ransomware, WannaCry, which came out and spread worldwide in 24 hours. I mean, in less than 24 hours, 250,000 computers were attacked in 150 countries, so nobody is immune. And that was ransomware where I believe they were asking for 300 euros they're actually taking the file on your computer, encrypting them, and asking for money to be able to decrypt it, otherwise you lose all your files. So it's not specifically industrial control issue, but actually a lot of companies got affected. The UK National Health Service had to postpone surgeries because hospitals were affected. Federal Express was affected. Nissan had to stop making cars. And then last month, in June, right at the end of June, we had another malware which looked like ransomware. Actually, it was not. It was just trying to destroy. We call it wipeware. And that also affected a large number of companies and had very significant impact. Again, it started off Ukraine, but it affected Rosneft, the largest Russian oil company. We know Maersk, one of the largest shipping company, said they were losing $200 to $300 million because of it. We had lots of plants affected. Cadbury in Cadbury and
so these
lots
are
of issues.
These are matters that. So basically, what you're saying is industrial cybersecurity has to keep on developing with whatever technology that is developed.
There's two things. We are susceptible to the generic IT threats, like all these threats, but also there's now special malware which is really targeting power grid. Typically, right now, they're collecting information. We've seen in Ukraine, and it's more like a demonstration because they've been cutting off power to a fifth of Kiev, the capital of Ukraine, for a few hours. But it looks like it was more a play, something testing the technology, the malware technology, than actually trying to do real damage.
Right.
But real damage is possible. And the challenge is, if it's just a power cut, we can all leave the power cut for a few hours.
Yeah.
The question is if it lasts for days, weeks, because some of these issues can actually damage the equipment, and then you would have to replace transformers. That takes time.
With that, we have to go into a short commercial break. We'll be talking about more industrial cybersecurity here in Sri Lanka and why it's important to us as Sri Lankans here. We'll be joining you soon after this short commercial break.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
Welcome back to the show. We are in discussion with Dr. Vincent Termel, who is an industrial cybersecurity expert. We have been talking to him of what this ICM or industrial cybersecurity methods are. We are going to delve deeper into this subject, and I'm going to ask Dr. Termel. Now, we spoke about various incidents that have happened across the globe, but why would Sri Lanka, or who would target Sri Lanka in terms of creating these IT issues in the country in terms of all these separate automation systems that you speak of?
That's an excellent question, and there's a range of actors. We would have people which just do it because they can. You know, it's really the actors.
For the fun of it.
Exactly. You find unprotected systems, and they can do that. They are not the most dangerous. Also, we always think about the employees, disgruntled employees, the insiders, the knowledgeable insiders which want to take revenge, do something bad. That's actually a big source of potential. And that's for every business, really. And then you have what we call activists, people which have a cause, whatever it is, and want to make companies attack a company because of it, whatever the cause is. These are also relatively minor issues. Now, what is getting more and more important is really criminal organizations trying to make money. And you have lots of extortion. Ransomware is one form of it. And it's really monetizing whatever way to do that. So you can, at a high level, you'd be stealing proprietary information, trying to make money that way, or you just the pure basic ransomware. And then, the last but not least is really the government actors, you know, other governments, and they have the means to do practically whatever they want. And usually, why would Sri Lanka be a target? Probably not, but you never know. The real challenge is the tools the state actors are using can very quickly become available to everybody, criminals in particular. And we saw that with both WannaCry and the PITAIA, like in May and June examples. These are tools which apparently were used by the US NSA for a long time, and they were released on, I think in April, by suspected, shadow broker released that, and within a month you see this exploit being used by criminal syndicates immediately to try to make money out of it and really creating a VARC on the networks. So the level of sophistication can change very quickly. Something which is very complicated to do can very quickly become available to anybody. And that's really the risk. But you think you're well protected only to state actors, and a month later, a 15-year-old in his house can probably do it.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of 15-year-olds, we had a situation where a 16-year-old boy tried to hack into the official website of our president. So I'm going to ask you a question on that as well. We know that all these the young people who are involved in the sector, who are involved in this IT industry, they have a tendency to explore and then go into means and ways, and hacking seems to be a hobby for some people here in Sri Lanka as well. When they start off doing things, they do not know the line between the criminal side of it and being on the normal side of it. How do you differentiate this and say, this is where you stop and this is where you don't go?
Basically, as soon as you start creating any damage, as soon as you start deleting anything, there are legal implications, so we shouldn't do it, really. It's a good skills development, and maybe Sri Lanka can develop a white knight, some good hackers to try to help the cybersecurity world. But basically the line is you should not damage anything, and even by just doing it, you are opening yourself to some legal implications. That's the challenge.
In terms of all of that, Sri Lanka is a country where we do not have a privacy act still for the industrial sector or even the normal citizens. Laws and regulations, how well do they help your industry?
Well, that's an excellent question, and actually the regulations are coming in the critical infrastructures. The US is separate, is a bit different because it's mostly private industries, but if you look at Singapore, just in July enacted some new laws to actually promote the protection of critical infrastructures. So the laws are very important because companies, government agencies, everybody is very complacent, right? Nobody is going to do something they don't need to do. We see that in every country, and really the bar is to do the minimum. You want to be as good as your other competitors in your industry, because at the end of the day it costs time and money, and what is the return of it? It's a threat avoidance, right? You're not going to make money by protecting your company, but you're going to make sure it keeps making the money it's making, or keep providing the services you're doing if you're a government agency. So the laws are actually, regulations are really powerful in making sure action is being taken. On the other hand, you have to be careful that the regulations are not written in such a restrictive way that people would be more like checking the box, say, yes, I've done this, but not having meaningful protection.
Definitely.
Just doing something for the sake of doing something. So there's a balance to be.
Dr. Termel, now you spoke of USA in this answer as well. Now we know that we are more of a, Sri Lanka is a country where the government sector is also very powerful in terms of all these industries, transportation sector, public utilities. The government has a monopoly in several of these institutions. So obviously when it comes to a country like us, maybe a country like even India, even though they have a high private sector operating there, the government sponsorship to get the industrial cybersecurity up is also very important. The government help rather. How does that happen in other countries, and how do you contrast that with our country, or is it the same on par with other countries?
Well, I think most governments are trying to protect their own government services and public agencies. You have actually a Sri Lanka computer emergency response team. I'm not sure if they're very active in the industrial side, but for computer systems, you have that in place. And clearly, all governments is part of a government's job, really, to make sure it keeps doing business.
Yes. We know that we have a separate ministry for digital infrastructure development here in our country, and with the 2017 budget, this was one of an expenditure head that was actually increased rather than being cut down. We had a cut down for education, we had a cut down for transport, but we had an increase for digital infrastructure. Obviously, the sector you are in, cybersecurity in terms of industries, is a costly job. It's going to involve a lot of money. Where does a country like Sri Lanka fit? Because you know that our country has other problems as well, a debt burden going on, various other issues, drought happening. Do you think at this moment, if a government agent is watching this show with us right now and calls you up and say, you know what, our transport sector is in trouble, you know what, our traffic light system needs a industrial cybersecurity mechanism, is this something that Sri Lanka should focus right now, or do we have time? What do you have to say about that?
But prioritization is always the executive's job, right? It's always a tough. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. That's for sure. It's same in private companies. It's always the same. It's a challenge. It's always a challenge, and you need to make sure that what is really critical is being protected. It's always a balance to be found.
So you're saying, you're not saying that we shouldn't do it, or you're not saying that we should do it?
I mean, the question is, you're going to spend a lot of money putting some infrastructure in place, building a new power station, you have new desalination plants and things like that. You just need to make sure the extra cost to make it in a secure way is minimal. Do it right the first time. It's a lot costly to do it back later or to have incidents later. That's really...
IT security seems to be a problem in the South Asian region as a whole as well. India has a lot of companies that are involved in this sector. Other markets are trying to capture this advantage and, you know, go in with India to the world. We saw bank hacking, or the central bank being hacked in Bangladesh. Situations like this. The South Asian sector as a whole also seems to be developing in terms of the industrial cyber security and even the information technology sector. Where do we stand as a region?
Well, IT outsourcing is really big in India, as you know, and I know other countries in the region, including Sri Lanka, also going into that. So that's definitely a booming sector. And a lot of what's happening is a lot of these high-tech sector. I mean, Sri Lanka's education is going up, and that's creating some actually good jobs in the IT world. What it means is there's a lot of information going back and forth between countries, so there's a regulation issue. Also a telecom issue. You know, Sri Lanka is actually at the heart of communications and undersea cables between Asia and Europe, and we are very well placed here to take advantage of that. If you look at cybersecurity, that's following, you know, flow of data. There's no question about it.
It's understood that when you talk about industrial cybersecurity, there are various issues surrounding it. You need a lot of methods and mechanisms. It's a very meticulous thing that we are talking about. It's not a thing that we can, you know, just wake up one day and say, you know, the government is going to initiate industrial cybersecurity in our country. What is your view on that, and what steps should the government take if we are going to go into this in the future?
That's a very good question. The steps have to be, first of all, you have to protect what's critical. You have to make sure what you do new is actually secure. A lot of these systems are old and are going to stay there forever, and you have to be able to both make sure what you do new is secure and have a way to retrofit security to the existing infrastructure. That's really the bottom line. The key differences between IT security and digital control: if you look for IT, you're dealing with computers. You can always update the software, put some antivirus, patch your antivirus again every day, and update Windows every month. You know, this is what you do. Control systems are different in the way that a lot of them runs in places where you can't access them easily, you can't patch them. Some are old, there's no patches. A lot of these systems run old version of Windows for which there's no protection anymore. You cannot install antivirus because there also a lot of those are not computers. And the manufacturers may or may not have a patch, but you don't have time to fix it as well. I mean, are you going to stop operations for a day or for a few hours? Sometimes these systems run for years and decades without stopping, really. So it's a different challenge there.
But then when you look at the flip side of it, when you cannot maybe stop this operation for a few hours, and when you can't actually do anything about it and maybe upgrade it, that itself is a problem for you all. How do you cope with that? Well,
the challenge is there's a lot of vulnerabilities, you know, issues, which usually would be fixed by software, but they are not fixed because it's old or because you can't upgrade the software. So you have to live with these issues, with these vulnerabilities where somebody could, with access to the system, access to the network, could actually take control sometimes or do whatever they want with the systems. And you have to learn to live with that. So one other thing we can do is, you know, we do network-based security. You have to stop the threat from the network so that you can go into the devices, not at the device level, we'll stop it before. And also make sure that if there's anything happening, it stays isolated, doesn't propagate all across the system. So there are things you can definitely do. We basically have to learn to live with the vulnerabilities. We can't just fix everything. And even in Windows, every month you think you fixed everything until the next month there's another number of issues coming up. So you know you're never fixing everything.
Doctor, how did you get involved in all of this? Where did you start and why did you come into cybersecurity?
I was working in process automation for a long time, and over 10 years ago, we saw the need for our customers to help our customers doing cybersecurity. And so I got involved really in industrial cybersecurity. I was really working in process automation, and slowly shifted to cyber until it became a full-time job a few years ago. And
right.
Now.
In terms of all the problems that you encounter in terms of industrial cybersecurity, there is obviously not going to be one solution to all these problems. It's going to vary from time to time. But can I ask you this? What is the most common problem that you have encountered in all of your years of work?
You know, there's a lot of things. One of the issue is people believe they have a firewall and they have an antivirus and they think they don't need anything else. And the complacency is the issue. People are connecting things they don't even know are connected. Most companies don't understand the connectivity they have within their companies, what people are doing. Like individuals may be doing things that the company would think, no, we would never do that. It actually is happening.
Inside the office?
Inside the offices, inside the plants. And people don't do that in a bad way. They just try to do their job, keep the plants running, keep the company running. And you end up with situations which are actually really bad. And they don't realize it, and they live with that. And until they start losing money for a reason, they think everything is fine. The most common misconception is, we've been running this facility for 20 years. Why do we need anything different, you know?
Yeah.
Well, the next 20 years will be different from the last 20 years. That's unfortunately the reality of modern life.
You spoke about criminal organizations as well when I asked you who the threats are and what Sri Lanka has to look at. Are there examples of such things happening in terms of cybersecurity? We spoke about the IT sector being vulnerable, but industrial cybersecurity, has there been any large-scale incidents?
The challenge is people don't tell, companies don't go to the news media to say, oh, we've been hacked, or we had to pay a ransom, or doing things like that. The best example we know about is a German steel mill in December 2014, where the operator lost control of the plant. Some outside actors took control of a big steel plant, and they asked for money to give it back, and they actually had to shut down the plant, and they had millions of euros of damage. The operators had to shut it down manually. They lost, and that was the biggest example we know.
So, the other side of that question, has a place where industrial cybersecurity being installed properly been able to stop any major incidents as well?
Well, you see that companies which are actually putting system to all the big companies on the IT side have what we call the security information and event management. They're looking at what is happening. Somebody tried to do an intrusion, somebody entered a bad password, etc. So you can see a log of everything which is happening. If you look at any company with a website, financial institutions, etc., they've got so many attempts every second. In the industrial side, it's actually rare to keep logs. People don't even know what's going on. But there's definitely, you know, they know what's going on. And the best description we have is after there's a big event happening, like Ukraine, etc., you've got security researcher coming in and really looking at all the details on what happened.
So basically, in terms of your sector, you can also stop something from happening, and if something happens, you can identify the path of events. Is that what you're telling?
Yes. You really want to do two things. First, what you really want to do is be able to block the event. That's the number one thing. A lot of the time, the blocking mechanisms are not in place. So the best you can do after something happened, you do forensic, try to figure out what happened to make sure that you can block it the next time. But the next time won't be the same thing. It will be something different.
Yes.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
But there are mechanisms to actually try to block very generic ways. This is the kind of thing we do. For example, if a device needs only to be read, you can block write access. That's a basic mechanism. But you know, you can do things like that. That's really the way forward.
Thank you, Doctor, for joining us on Newsline this morning. Thank you very much for coming down. The Doctor will be on Talk of the Town also on our radio channels in a short while. Thank you once again, Doctor.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
We'll be joining you next, or rather tomorrow as well, with an interesting guest. However, I will not be joining you. Sonali Vaningabadge will be joining you with an interesting guest tomorrow. So hope to catch her as well. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Saturang Hapwat.
Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukut Ali.